Hi, welcome to another edition of Cyber Warfare. I'm here on location outside of the La Horquetta Gospel Foundation, a member church of the Pentecostal Assemblies of the West Indies. This church is pastored by the Reverend Dr. Pat Glasgow, who is also the General Bishop of the Pentecostal Assemblies of the West Indies. We'll be joining him shortly for today's message, which focuses on the tremendous work done by a band of unlearned men. Sounds very interesting, so stay with us and I'll be back after the message with some important information for you. Let's join Reverend Glasgow now.
If I'm to give a theme to what I want to share this morning, it will be called 21st Century Discipleship. 21st Century Discipleship. And I want you to turn your Bibles to Matthew's Gospel, chapter 10. And the reason why I want to, in browsing this text, I realized that this text in Matthew speaks the most about discipleship and speaks the most about disciples. And if I'm to ask the question, how many of you are members of the church? Most of you would lift your hands. But if I'm to ask another question, how many of you are disciples of Jesus? I hope that all of you could lift your hands. Someone made a statement recently, and they said that the church should be teaching people more how to be disciples of Jesus than to be members of churches. And as I reflected on it and I looked at the text in Matthew's Gospel, chapter 10, it's something that I could agree on, because sometimes we are so caught up with the politics of church and the rituals of church, and in fact, some of the things that we advocate sometimes in churches, I'm not too sure how much Jesus will sanction them. But Jesus talks a lot about how to be a disciple. Because if the world is going to be changed, the world is going to be changed by disciples of Jesus Christ. And so what I have done is to look at this entire text, Matthew chapter 10, from verse 1 to the end, and I have divided it into about 4 areas, one of which I will share today. And what I see in it are some very important principles for us Christians if we are to become disciples of Jesus Christ. And this morning, in the next couple of weeks rather, I want to share on, and I give these names that brings out the concept in the text. The first one is this band of unlearned men. And we'll talk about that today. And then I want to talk about authority or madness. Do we have authority, or is it that we are plain mad as Christians? And then, who call you will take care of you? Because sometimes there's a perception that when we go and do the work of God, we blame everybody else but the one who called us when we get ourselves into problems. And then the 4th week I want to talk about, this is not about games. It's not about games. And so let's talk first of all this week on this band of unlearned men. Whenever the word disciples come to your mind or come to people's mind, there are a number of things that, or it evokes various responses. One of the responses that it evokes is that of laughter. And it's laughter because it reminds people of people who are silly and hypocrites. When people talk about disciples of Jesus Christ, or they hear when the skeptics say about disciples of Jesus Christ, they think of people who are silly, people who don't know what they're doing, people who are not enjoying life. And in fact, some of us give the impression that we look forsaken and we look as though we are not enjoying this life called Christianity. And the Christian ought not to look so, by the way. And then the word suspicion comes to the minds of people. And it comes to the minds of people's mind because it reminds people of the fact that when people say that they want to be disciples of Jesus, they have some ulterior motive in the back of their mind. Why is he going to church now? Why is Mr. Gervais in church? And if they see a young man come to church, obviously he has an ulterior motive. There is some young girl in that church he's coming after. So it evokes this concept of being suspicious, because they think that no one can actually be a disciple of Jesus following his lifestyle, because it's a tough lifestyle. You think the world does not know that being a Christian is difficult? If it was easy, this church would be full. Packed, ram-crap. But the fact that being a Christian involves sacrifice, it involves pain, it involves a number of things, it's not easy to be a disciple of Jesus Christ. In fact, when we look at the text, we would see a little more about that. And then for some people, the word discipleship evokes this concept of pain because it reminds people of the suffering that people who are called Christians have to go through. And to some extent, we in the Western world do not and have not yet experienced real suffering and pain as being a Christian. When you read the book of Hebrews, the early church, some of them were cut in two, some of them were placed in animal skin and left to dry in the hot sun. Some of them were crucified upside down. A whole lot of stuff happened to people who wanted to be disciples of Jesus. And in fact, because of that, many, many, many people died knowing or wanting to be called a disciple of Jesus Christ.